There is a company in China called Pangdonglai, and honestly, it completely flips everything you think you know about Chinese businesses on its head. The stereotype most people have, and let's be real, a lot of Chinese people have it too, is that Chinese companies cut corners, squeeze their workers dry, chase quick money, and don't really care about business ethics. Most Chinese workers, if you ask them about their employer, will just go on a long rant about how awful things are. But Pangdonglai is the exact opposite. It is a regional retail chain, supermarkets and department stores based in Henan province, with locations mainly in two mid-sized cities, Xuchang and Xinxiang. That is it. Not Beijing, not Shanghai. Just these two smaller cities. And yet, across the entire country, Pangdonglai is basically seen as the gold standard for how a Chinese company should behave. Why? Because it treats its employees incredibly well. The pay is high, the time off is generous, and there is a genuine culture of respect. In a province like Henan, where wages tend to be lower than the coastal cities, a frontline Pangdonglai employee can earn around $1,500 a month, which is really good for that area. On top of that, the benefits and holiday time are exceptional. Employees actually feel valued. That is why so many of them stay for 10-15 years. And it is not uncommon to see two generations of the same family working there. Then there is the customer experience. Pangdonglai is obsessive about quality control on its products, has very flexible return policies, and pays attention to details that even some high-end Western or Japanese retailers don't always bother with. Even their restrooms have become a benchmark that competitors visit just to study. And it is not just employees and customers. Pangdonglai treats its suppliers well too. Payments are made on time, every time, no IOS, no delayed payments, no hidden fees. So naturally, suppliers want to give them the best products they have. So yeah, Pangdonglai's success really does come down to having the highest business ethics in the country. And the funny thing is, none of this is some secret formula. It is just basic stuff. Be honest, treat your workers well, be genuine with your customers. Be fair to your suppliers. That is it. So why in all these years has China only produced one Pangdonglai? The model is right there. Why doesn't everyone just copy it? Here is the thing. It is not that other companies don't understand the model. They just don't want to follow it because Pangdonglai's success requires something most entrepreneurs aren't willing to do: restraint. Pangdonglai carries zero debt, and it has stayed in just those two cities in Henan for years. Not because it couldn't expand, but because the founder knows that the moment you scale too fast, this whole model falls apart. Expansion means opening more stores, which means raising capital, which means bringing in investors or going public. And once you're public, you answer to shareholders, and shareholders care about one thing: how fast profits are growing. They're not going to sit around patiently while you build a reputation on doing the right thing. So once you get sucked into that capital-driven logic, all those ethical principles start getting sacrificed. You cut labor costs, you lower service standards, you stretch out payment terms with suppliers. And suddenly, you're just another ordinary Chinese company. The reality is, a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs never intended to build something like Pangdonglai in the first place. Their goal from day one isn't to create a company that lasts 100 years. It is to scale up as fast as possible, pump up the valuation, cash out, and move on. The company isn't a long-term mission. It is a vehicle for making money. Pangdonglai is the opposite. Its founder, Yu Donglai, never treated the business as something to flip for a quick profit. He built it as a lifelong endeavor, and that is exactly why he has been willing to resist the urge to expand, to pass up opportunities that could have made fast money, and instead spend years slowly building trust. So Pangdonglai is an exception. Not because nobody understands what it does, but because the path is too slow, too disciplined, and too incompatible with the ambitions of most business owners. And it is precisely because Pangdonglai is such an outlier that when this so-called 4 billion yuan incident happened recently, the Chinese internet absolutely erupted. So let me explain what actually happened. The version most people heard online was that Pangdonglai took about 4 billion yuan, that is roughly $550 million, sitting in its company accounts and just handed it all out to employees. But if you actually read the announcement that Yu Donglai himself published, the picture is quite different. What he said, in essence, was this: because the company is preparing to build a major new project called City of Dreams, it decided to formalize its internal asset and profit-sharing structure. Assets that had accumulated over years of operation, totaling about 4 billion yuan, were now being clearly allocated as equity stakes. Who owns what percentage? How future profits get divided? All of it was being put into a proper, transparent system. But the money itself never left the company. It wasn't a cash payout. It was a restructuring of ownership. After this redistribution, Yu Donglai personally holds just 5% of the company. The rest belongs to employees. This is simply the next step in a profit-sharing philosophy Peng Donglai has practiced for over 20 years, but Chinese internet users read the whole thing very differently. See, Yu Donglai's announcement mentioned the City of Dreams project. Peng Donglai had been planning to build a massive commercial complex near the Xuchang East High-Speed Rail Station, with an estimated budget of around 7 billion yuan, close to $1 billion. The company had about 4 billion on hand, and with another year or two of profits, it could cover the full cost without taking on any debt. Classic Peng Donglai. But then rumors started circulating that senior Henan provincial officials had approached Yu Donglai and pressured him to move the project to Zhengzhou East Station instead, where there happened to be a stalled, unfinished development. Basically, they wanted him to bail out a failed, government-backed project. And conveniently, the price tag for that bailout also around 4 billion yuan. So people connected the dots. Yu Donglai didn't want to get roped into rescuing this white elephant. So he restructured the company's equity, reduced his own stake to just 5%, and effectively made every employee a co-owner. That way, any decision about the company's money would no longer be his alone to make. It would require the consent of thousands of employee shareholders. It was, in the public's reading, a defensive move to shield the company from government overreach. Now, the most thought-provoking part of this whole story isn't whether the Henan government was actually eyeing Peng Donglai's cash. It is why Chinese internet users jumped to that conclusion so instantly, so naturally. Without a second thought, why is it that the moment people see a private company sitting on a large pile of cash, a local government pushing a mega project, and a sudden equity restructuring by the founder, they immediately assume the government is trying to shake down the business? Because for a lot of ordinary Chinese people, that is exactly how local governments operate. Many local governments in China are drowning in debt. And when they need money, the first place they look is the private sector. They talk a big game about supporting private enterprise. But the moment the budget runs dry, they come knocking. When things are good, you're an outstanding entrepreneur. When they need your money, you suddenly become a model of social responsibility. People in China know this script by heart, and the irony is thick. It is essentially a shakedown. But it gets wrapped up in the most dignified-sounding language imaginable. For a company like Peng Donglai, though, the situation may be even more precarious. It is not just a profitable private business. It is a business that has won the genuine love and loyalty of its community. People in Xuchang and Xinxiang adore Peng Donglai. The company has built a small pocket of functioning, trust-based social order, and that kind of grassroots loyalty can make authorities very uncomfortable. That tension between a company that earns devotion through decency and a system that often views organic public trust with suspicion is really at the heart of why so many people worry about Peng Donglai's future. There is a real question of whether a business built on radical integrity can survive long-term in an environment where the rules often reward the opposite. And that is what makes the Peng Donglai story so fascinating and so heartbreaking at the same time. In any other context, a company like this would just be a good company. But in China, being genuinely ethical has become so rare that it turns you into a national symbol and potentially a target